how does Bryce Young get redeemed at this point in time? Like, what metric by which, I mean, by the way, this conversation could be moot the first quarter that Max Crosby gets his hands on Andy Dalton, in the first quarter.
You're right.
And Young's out there now as a benched quarterback being asked to play. So the question is, what happens from here? How do you see this playing out, Lewis?
Going back to what you had said originally, though, about Dave Canales, I'm not naive enough to think he didn't tell David Tepper, hey, I can fix him. Right. Yeah, I'll take the job. Of course, I liked him coming out of school. I can do a lot of things with this kind of, with this kind of athlete. I can recreate some of the things he did at Alabama. Smaller quarterbacks have survived in this league. Height isn't a problem. His body structure isn't a problem. I can do all those things, of course. Especially considering what everyone raved about with Bryce Young coming out in the draft, which was, what was the number one thing that they said that he did better than anybody? It was process. It was get on the whiteboard, be able to talk about his scheme, make quick decisions, on the field. And his coaches down at Bama, Nick said, they all said the same thing about him. So, yeah, it wasn't like he was sitting there going, well, I don't really believe in him. I hardly doubt that was the conversation. But how does this flip?
Yep.
It flips when you have that meeting on Monday with the owner, and the owner is watching C.J. Stroud and hears everyone talking about how good C.J. Stroud is and sees that they're maybe a favorite to, like, dethrone Kansas City in the AFC, and he's going, I want some of that. I want to be talked about that way, when he was the primary problem in the first place. And then he just changes his mind. It's like selling a stock, buying a stock. And the only reason I make that analogy is because I've heard some things like that about how business guys like that sometimes run their business and then try to come into the football world and run the football world like that, which we know it doesn't work. You don't do that. So now how does Bryce redeem himself? Look, you're right. It could flip on its head with one, unfortunate hit. And we're all hoping that doesn't happen to Andy. But yeah, it could all change and he could be back in there. But to me, if I'm Bryce Young right now, I want to get as far away from this place as possible. Because they've already told me what they really think. Now, if I get back in there out of necessity because Andy Dalton gets hurt, that isn't really because they really, truly still believe in me. It's because I have to, not because they want me to. I think how he really gets redeemed and how he really is able to clear his head and reset is to go somewhere that, with a team where the people literally tell him, hey, look, we want you. We see what the deficiencies were with the structure you were thrust into, and then the things that you need to take accountability for that you need to be better at, and we're going to work from there and move forward. Look, who was it that reached out to him that I just heard recently? Baker Mayfield, a guy who bounced around to multiple teams who many people in the media thought, Baker's done. Baker's never going to be a franchise guy. Baker's never going to be a guy who people think can really take him to the postseason and win football games. And he bounced around from Cleveland to Carolina to the LA Rams. I mean, he's been everywhere. It seemed like before he landed in Tampa Bay. And now Tampa Bay's got to be considered one of the favorites in the NFC because of him, largely because of him. So it can happen, but he has to find that place where he is wanted and where it really fits. And there's no division between what the owner wanted, what the head general manager wanted, what the head coach wants, what the offensive coordinator wants, the quarterback coach wants. I've been involved in situations where maybe it wasn't quarterback, but there were other positions where a defensive back coach or a coordinator didn't want what the general manager wanted. And they were just looking for ways to cut that player down and to say, look, I was right. You were wrong. We should have never drafted this guy. I didn't want him in the first place. And it just creates a very toxic situation. It ain't going to happen. You never say never. I don't see it ever working for him in Carolina. He needs to get out of there and reset, because that is one. That's got to be tremendously, let's just call it for what it is. That's extremely, extremely embarrassing. I'm sure his confidence right now is shaken, if not shot in the short term. And I would want a restart.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.